Okay, so in the last videos, we went through C, F, B, E, A, D, and G, and that's in a certain order, certain pattern that'll become useful a bit later. But right now, we're going to reorder those as C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then tag C out on the end. So that gives us a C major scale, and it looks like this. This is one way to play it. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Going down. C, B, A, G, F, E, D, C. So in between some of those notes, there is an empty fret, and some there isn't. So in between those empty frets, we're going to put other notes we're going to learn. But let's just take a look at which is which. So between our first two notes, C and D, there is one fret in between. So to get to either D or C, I have to go past one empty fret. The next two notes, D and E, there's an empty fret in between. I'm going to go between E and F. There is no empty fret in between that one. Between F and G, there is an empty fret in between. I'm going to move over here for G. Between G and A, there is an empty fret between those two. Moving to A and B, there is an empty fret. And the last two, B and C, there is no empty fret. So between, it turns out, E and F and B and C, there is no fret in between them. So those would be called a half step apart. It's also called a semitone apart, but let's stick with half step because there's something called a whole step, and half step and whole step fit together better than semitone and whole step. So we're going to move back to C and look at the notes that we can fill in between those. Okay, so between C and D, if I'm moving up from C to D, we're going to call this middle note C sharp and move to D. If I'm at D and I'm moving backwards to C, we're going to call this D. Then we're going to call this the next fret D flat, and then C. So moving up, you call it a sharp note. On the way down, you call it a flat note, generally. That's generally the idea. There's some other cases where things change, but generally that's the idea. So C, up a half step, C sharp, up a half step, D. D, down a half step, D flat, down half step, C. So C to C sharp is a half step. C sharp to D is a half step. There's no frets in between them. D and D flat is a half step. D flat and C is a half step. So between C and D, that's a whole step. So if I was to move from C up a fret towards me, that's a half step up. Let's go back to C. If I move from C down a half step, that's away from me. That's down a half step. I move back to C. Now from C, I'm going to move 2 half steps, 2 frets. 1, 2, that's 2 frets. That's a whole step. Back to C, I'm going to move down 2 half steps away from me. From C, down 1, down 2. That's a whole step. So from C, this is a half step up. From C, this is a half step down. From C, this is a whole step up. From C, this is a whole step down. That's a new note. We'll find that out later. Okay, so in between each of these notes of our C major scale, we're going to learn some new notes. They're going to be called something on the way up, and they'll be called something else on the way down, just like we saw with C sharp and D flat. So again, C, up, C sharp up to D, going backwards, D, down to D flat, down to C. So C sharp and D flat are the same note. They're just called something different based on which direction you're coming from. And other reasons too, but for now that'll do. Okay, now we're gonna move on to our next two notes. We did C and D. Now we're going to do D and E. D, if I move up a half step, D sharp. If I move up another half step, I'm at E. If I'm at E, I move down a half step, E flat. I move down another half step, D. So D, D sharp, E, back down, E, E flat, D. Okay? And again, D sharp and E flat are the same note, the same way that C sharp and D flat are the same note. Okay, we have C, D, and we're going to E now. We're going between E and F. We went between D and E before. So E, and our next note is F. There is no half step between those two. E, F, F, E. No half step. So we can skip that for now. Let's move to F and G. F and G, G and F. F, move up a half step to F sharp. Move up another half step to G. Now G, I'm going to move down a half step to G flat. I'm going to move again to F. So F, F sharp, G, G, G flat, F. So again, F sharp and G flat, same note. All right, we're at G. We got to go between G and A now. Let's move over here for G and A. So G and A and G. So in between, we got our half step. So G, move up to G sharp, move up again to A. We're at A. I'm moving down, away from me. A to A flat to G. So G, G sharp, A flat, G. So G sharp and A flat, same note. Okay, stay on the same string for the A to B, A to B, B to A. A moves up to A sharp. A sharp moves to B. B coming down is called B flat. Come down another half step, we're back at A. A sharp, B, B flat, A. So just like before, A sharp and B flat, same note. All right, so we just have two more. B, one more. B to C, C to B, and we have no half steps, right? So in between our E and our F and our B and our C, we have no half steps. Everything else has a half step.